Good evening. Let us please begin with the weekday announcement of silencing our phones. And by silence, we mean silence. Silence. Airplane mode is good, unless you have your alarm set to go off at 7:40. In which case, it won't help you. Thank you all for coming tonight. Our topic this evening is the Halacha and Minhag review pre-holidays, and of course the coming holiday is Chanukah. It's interesting in the Shulchan Aruch, when you look at the laws of Chanukah versus the laws of Purim. So the Shulchan Aruch actually has more simanim dedicated to Chanukah than it has to Purim. Which, if you look at Chanukah from the length of time that Chanukah spans, 8 days of Chanukah, it would make sense. But if you look at Chanukah from the perspective of the number of mitzvos related to Chanukah versus the number of mitzvos of Purim, so Purim has a lot more mitzvos. Chanukah really only has one. A little bit about Al Hanisim, the recitation of Al Hanisim and Hallel on Chanukah, but it's really just one siman dedicated to davening. Purim also has a siman dedicated to davening, but the four mitzvahs of Purim get a lot less press time than the one mitzvah of Chanukah. How many mitzvahs of Chanukah are there? It's really just lighting the candles, and yet the Shulchan Aruch goes into intricate detail about every possible scenario that could come up that should help a person know exactly what to do under the circumstances that may arise over the course of the holiday. So, why is it? I mean, I couldn't venture to guess why the Shulchan Aruch made such an effort to cover every single detail of Chanukah, except maybe there's some deeper significance to Chanukah which we tend to miss simply because we don't have the grandiose nature of what we associate now with Purim, between the reading of the Megillah and coming out and everybody going out and the Shalach Manas and meeting everybody. So there's something about Chanukah that perhaps we're missing, and hopefully at the end of this we'll get back to that piece. Okay, tonight's class is going to follow the outline which you have in front of you, and essentially I'm going to hit every bullet point and I'll comment on each one as we go through it. So the first thing that we need to understand when we look at the halachos of Chanukah is to understand the history of Chanukah. And of course, we're familiar with the idea that there was a Greek presence in the land of Israel during the time of the second Beis Hamikdash, and at that time, as we read about in Al Hanisim, there was a concerted effort to rid the Judaism of the Jews, not to destroy the Jews in a genocidal way or an annihilation way, but to get at our soul and to destroy us from within. And the Maccabim, the Maccabees, or they're called the Chashmonaim, the Hasmoneans, led by Matisyahu the Kohen Gadol and his sons, staged a revolt against the Greeks, pushed them back, and essentially, as the Rambam says, Chazar Malchus Yisrael Yesra Motaim Shana, they reinstated kingship in a way which was controversial because the Chashmonaim were kings, and kings is the kingship. Were Kohanim. Chashmonaim were Kohanim, and Kohanim are not supposed to be kings. They have a different role, but nonetheless, the Rambam does view the return of Jewish sovereignty into the land of Israel, absent the Greeks, as a good thing. So we certainly have that to celebrate in that time, because over 200 years of Jewish sovereignty returned to the land. That is the historical point. And similar to Purim, when there was a military victory, and as a result of the military victory, there was a reason to celebrate. So Chanukah in and of itself would have been a military victory and a reason to celebrate for a day. But what makes Chanukah special and unique is the 8-day period of Chanukah, and that is primarily given credit to the Nes Pach HaShemen, the miracle of the oil. What was the miracle of the oil? So there are four views. This is most of the sources which I have here were taken straight from the Encyclopedia Talmud's analysis of of Chanukah. So the miracle of the oil is not just, we're in school we all learned that there was a little bit of oil and it lasted for 8 days, which leads to the question, well, if there was enough oil for 1 day, then shouldn't the miracle only be 7 days? And there are a lot of answers to that question, but the Encyclopedia Talmud gives these four approaches about what the miracle was. Number one, what was the miracle? That all of the oil had become tameh. Tameh means that it was spiritually pure and unavailable to use in the menorah. The menorah had to have tahor oil which was pure. Number two, v'isur lahadlik b'shemen tameh, that despite there being a prohibition against lighting impure oil, they nonetheless were able to find oil to light. Why is it 8 days? That the reason that there was a need to have 8 days in order to find pure oil, and nonetheless they were able to have light for those days. And finally, in the essence of the miracle, that they were able to light for 8 days with the oil that was in that jug which was found, which was okay. So there are different ways to look at the overall viewpoint of where the basis for the miracle was. But the bottom line is that we look at the facts of there being not enough oil to last and it taking time in order to get new oil, and somehow it worked out for the people to be able to have in a rededicated Beis Hamikdash, the rededicated Mizbeach, etc., in the menorah itself, the ability to have the candles lit, to fulfill the dictum of Alos Ner Tamid, to have the candle lit for the time period from when they rededicated the Mikdash. So on that note, the next question is, where does the name of the holiday come from? So the Encyclopedia Talmud gives a number of examples. Number one, the Chanukah Mizbeach. The word Chanukah itself literally means a rededication. So the rededication of the Mizbeach, the altar, was put back into use. Remember what the Greeks had been guilty of, what they did to the Beis Hamikdash in defiling it. They brought non-kosher animals as sacrifices, which rendered the Mizbeach tameh, and it needed to be refurbished, rebuilt in a manner that it could be used. So the Chanukah Mizbeach. Similarly, chinuch kli hasharetz. Chinuch in this case doesn't mean education, but it means refoundation. Similar to the word Chanukah and Chanukah Mizbeach is the refoundation or the rededication of the vessels of the Beis Hamikdash. Also, you have the word Chanukah, or the root of the word Chanukah in there. The next suggestion, al shenischanech habayis v'uchshar la'avoda, simply that the Beis Hamikdash itself was rededicated, not about the Mizbeach specifically, but about in general the Beis Hamikdash. Another one is one which is more familiar to us, Chanu Chavhei, that they rested on the 25th day of Kislev. That's just taking the word Chanukah and breaking it down into smaller pieces. That the war against the Greeks and the Greek aggression, if you'll call it, I heard that in the South they call the Civil War the War of Northern Aggression. So the War of Greek aggression, that's not a joke, but it's true. But the War of Greek aggression was ended according to one viewpoint. Either on the 24th or the 25th day of Kislev. If it was on the 24th, just like on Purim, the war was on the 13th of Adar, and they rested on the 14th, so when do we celebrate? On the 14th. So similarly, there is a viewpoint that says that they finished fighting on the 24th, and therefore they rested on the 25th. There is another view that says that they finished on the 25th, and so we celebrate on the 25th. Both of those are out there. The exact history, the Book of Maccabees has a lot in there, but there are differing views about a lot of things. So what the exact history is a different discussion. Some say that the war ended much earlier, and that it's the Chanukah Mizbeach, which of course takes time to rebuild the Mizbeach and to rededicate the Beis Hamikdash from the time that the Greeks were gone until they actually rededicated. So obviously there are different viewpoints, and does it change anything? No, our holiday is what it is, and it doesn't change on account of whatever the specific historical details were. There is one other viewpoint here. That they did not rest on the 24th. It says Ela ba'erev, rather except for at evening. And in the nighttime after the 24th, they lit the candles. And some say that the word chanu, resting, refers to the concept of resting from work. Not so much about resting from the war, but they rested from doing work. And that is the source for the custom, which we're going to get to soon, about not doing malacha in the evening on Chanukah. Some attribute it only to women, but some say it's really for everybody, not to do malacha in the evening while the Chanukah candles are lit. So those of you who don't want to do any work in the house, make sure to fill that cup with a lot of oil, and then you don't have to do malacha in the evening. But if you want to be able to do your laundry, and you want to be able to do whatever types of malacha are otherwise not forbidden, but the custom is not to engage in, then have lights which last for a minimal amount of time, a little bit more than a minimal amount of time. But it's okay to enjoy that rest in the evening. The malacha, by the way, that we're talking about is not the rules of Shabbos. It's probably more similar to the rules of Chol HaMoed. So yeah, you can turn on lights, you can drive somewhere, you can go out to some entertainment, whatever it may be. It's more about doing things like laundry, sewing, stitching things up, things which are generally not done on Chol HaMoed. Okay, the main mitzvah of the holiday, to light the Chanukah candles, and here's where we're going to get to the nitty gritty. All kinds of case scenarios which can come up simply because people aren't always stuck in the house in the evening of Chanukah. We go out, sometimes people travel, sometimes one person in the household travels. So without further ado, let's get into this. The purpose of the lighting of the candles and the purpose of where we place the candles is to fulfill one major idea. And the major idea is called Persumei Nisa, publicizing the miracle. Having the candles lit is a fulfillment of the publicizing the miracle. Goes into an interesting question, and some people who let's say know a little bit less about the observance of the holiday may choose to put in electric Chanukah candles. Now, does one fulfill the mitzvah with electric Chanukah candles? Probably not. It's not really the way it's supposed to be done. When we talk about a nair, a candle, we're talking about something which is a flame, and that's the right way to do it. On the other hand, putting an electric Chanukah candle in the windowsill that people could see, could technically, one can argue that it is a fulfillment of Persumei Nisa, that you are publicizing the miracle, you're indicating this is a Jewish house. I observe the holiday of Chanukah, and so from that perspective, one can make an argument. Would I make a bracha on it? Absolutely not. Would I say it's a fulfillment of the mitzvah of lighting candles? No, I don't think so. But on the Persumei Nisa argument can be made that an indication is being made that we're remembering the miracle and publicizing the miracle. With reference to women, are women obligated in the lighting of the Chanukah candles? And the answer is yes. There are different customs out there as to whether women should actually be lighting the candles themselves. In other words, to have separate Chanukah menorah for the man of the household and a separate one for the woman of the household. There is a halachic principle that is that ishto kegufo, that a woman is like her husband. In other words, they share a body, and we say in the Torah that when a man and woman get married, they become like one flesh. So they're considered, in a halachic sense, like one person. In that they could fulfill the obligation of lighting the Chanukah candles with one menorah. But on the other hand, we also say that because that women were also involved in the miracle, the credit is given to the daughter of the Kohen Gadol Yehudit, who killed a Greek, a very, very important official. His name is debated, but nonetheless that she was involved in that, and therefore bringing about the salvation. That's one way of viewing that a woman brought about the salvation. Another one is that the Greeks were looking to destroy the Judaism of everybody. Just like Haman was looking to destroy men, women, and children, the Greeks were looking to suck the Judaism out of all the Jewish people. So women were also involved in the miracle, and therefore they have an equal obligation in terms of the lighting of the Chanukah candles. So women can make the bracha, women can be motzi men. Unlike with the question of Megillas Esther, where there's a difference between the night and the morning, with reference to Megillas Esther, when it comes to Chanukah candles, if you want to have the woman of the house lighted, it is permissible. It's not usually done, but it is permissible. Okay. With reference to yes.
So when, let's say it's a few nights in Chanukah, and there are many candles to light. A household could alternate men and women lighting different candles, or how?
No, so whoever makes the bracha should be lighting the candles.
All the candles.
Yeah, so all the candles of the specific menorah. Okay, but if you have your menorah and your wife has her own menorah, so you make the bracha for yours, and she should make the bracha for hers. if you're going to do that. And that is permissible. That can be done. And in a household that doesn't have children, where you don't have a lot of menorahs, maybe it's a nice thing to do that. I don't know. But one can go either way. With reference to the obligation of children, so it's not so much halacha, but essentially we say once the child understands to do this, then it can be done. I think it can be done at any age, as long as the kids are supervised and as long as they know to stay away from it. When they're especially when they're little. But the halacha is from the age of chinuch, which would typically mean for Chanukah candles, it could be, the age of chinuch is really relative. It's not the same for everybody. We would typically say that the age of chinuch is like 6, 7, 8. But if you think that a 3-year-old can't handle this, so I think a 3-year-old can handle it. And that is okay, and of course they should be supervised. Where to light the Chanukah candles? So this is the big issue, especially here in this neighborhood, driving around, looking around at the way the houses are structured. So we talked about this a little bit in shul after Shacharis one or two mornings. The ideal place to light the Chanukah candles in general is outside. Okay? Because the pursuing Isa, the publicizing the miracle, the best way to do it is outside. Anybody who drives by can see it. You don't have to squint anywhere. You don't have to try to see, is it in the window, is it not? Outside is the best way to do it. Now, owing to the nature of climate and the fact that weather is always an issue, if there's wind, certainly if it rains, it would put things out. So in Israel, I know it's very popular to have the Chanukah candles in a glass case. I guess rain could always happen it is winter time, so it is a winter season, it could happen. Wind is always an issue, so if you have it in a glass case, then that is good protection. Now, there are a couple of issues to bear in mind. If it's going to be removed, or if you have a place in homeowners association where they're not going to let you do that, okay, different problem. Now, it's a problem. It's usually because the Jews are making the problem. That's a different discussion. But if you can get away with it, that's the ideal, and that is what should be done. If it can't be done that way, then in some houses I know that you have like a screened-in porch. Okay. Right, a screened-in porch. Now that's another possibility. You're still outside. You're by the door, which is the second ideal way to do it. And it might be a little certainly more protected from the elements because you have on 3 sides you're protected from the wind and there's an overhang, of course. So if you can do that, then that would be best. After that, you're talking about the window. But in many of the houses at least that I've seen, you don't really have a window. I mean, even if you do have a window, it's kind of in a bedroom. It's very inconvenient. It doesn't necessarily work for the house because of the way the house is set up. So if you can do it anyway, great, then that's ideal. The window that faces the street should be the place that should be done. I mean, really, when the halacha talks about placing the menorah in a window, it talks about it in a circumstance where you can't put it outside, usually because the non-Jews don't let you get away with it. So thank God that's not the case here. I mean, at least from an oppression vantage point. There are other reasons why one might not be able to do it in a gated community. Okay, but so ideally a window if you're in the household, and then after that, if there isn't really a window that leads out to the street, so it should be in the house in a place which is most viewed by people. So you have to figure out where's the most traffic in your house. No, so if you open the garage, if you open the door of the garage, so that is a possibility. If you open the door of the garage, you could do it there too. You could do it there too, as long as your garage is not a mess. And then you're good. Okay. So that's another. Yes, that is certainly a possibility. In the event that you can't do it in a way that's publicized out to the street, then it should be done in the household, in a place which has the most traffic in the house. Now, if there isn't a lot of traffic in the house, but people hang out in the living room or people hang out in the kitchen, then that is the best place to do it. I don't recommend, even if you go to sleep early on Chanukah, I don't recommend putting it in your bedroom. That's not where it's supposed to be, because there's another issue which you have with Chanukah candles, and that is that you're not allowed to use the light. Ein lanu rishus, we say, ein lanu rishus l'shtamesh b'hem. We're not allowed to use the light for our purposes. We can only use it to look at, to publicize the miracle. We can publicize the miracle on the minimal level in our own home with the people who are there. So we should do it in a place where there is otherwise light, because we don't want to be guilty of using the Chanukah candles for any purposes beyond that. And if they're in a bedroom, and typically people go to sleep and they're still lit, you're going to turn the lights out, you still have your Chanukah candles, it is not going to be possible to avoid using those Chanukah candlelights, so that is not a good place to do it. The best traffic is probably the dining room, living room, kitchen, etc. How to set up the candles. Okay, here we're just going to follow what's on the page. The way you set up the candles is from right to left. Always begin putting in from the first candle you lit. Since your first candle is going to be the one on the rightermost edge, each night when you set up the candles, you put in the first one, the second one, the third one, the fourth one. How do you light? The opposite. You always light the new candle first from left to right. On the first night, we say 3 blessings. Every other night, there are 2 blessings. Left to right, as I mentioned, you always light the new candle first, and you light what we're saying while saying Haneros Halalu. If a person knows it by heart, that's great. If not, use a sitter, use a text, use one of those Haggah sheets, whatever you may have that allow for the proper recitation of the things which we say in order to just bring attention to what we're trying to accomplish through the lighting of the Chanukah candles and our goal in pursuing Nisa, but also touching on our history. Yes.
Question: when you light them and someone's seeing it from outside, which way should it be lit? And you're lighting it, putting it from right to left, lighting it from left to right, and if you're looking out, lighting it while you're looking out, people looking in.
Now, what they see doesn't matter. It's about the way you're doing it.
Okay.
Okay. In shul, there's a slightly different issue. In other words, when it's lit in shul, so the shul menorah is supposed to be on the southern wall of the shul, and whoever's lighting it should be behind it. So if we would leave it up there and light it, the person would have to be stuck against the wall. So next week, after my installation, I'll teach you about what it means to be installed against the wall. So you can light it, because that is what we're looking forward to. But what?
You make them cut out and stand behind the
Right, exactly. Nice little pegs on the wall. Yes.
If for some reason you can't light the first night.
We're gonna get there. We have the what ifs. We're gonna get there. Okay, move along. G, minimum and maximum requirements in the number of candles and obligations on the house, not on the persons. So this is a classic halachic line. You have the basic mitzvah is to have ner yeshuvah, so just to light one candle each night. And if a person for whatever reason doesn't have candles, or you have one candlestick, and you can get away with it, that is the minimal mitzvah, and that is fine. And I understand that there are some Sephardic communities that actually do that. They just have one candle, and that's their commemoration, and that is okay. Now, of course, with I don't want to call it the Americanization of Hanukkah, because that sounds kind of weird. But with not the multiculturalism, but just the way it's marketed, the marketing of Hanukkah. Well, commercialization, that's the word I'm looking for. The commercialization of Hanukkah, anybody who's only putting one Hanukkah candle, I mean, come on, right? Where aren't you Jewish? Yes, and that's why I know I can only do one Hanukkah candle, and that's fine. But one candle is for the house is okay, and that is the minimum obligation. Otherwise, one candle per person. That's called just mahadrin. That you have everybody lighting one candle, and the minimum mahadrin is that everybody's lighting the way that we do it, which is we add one candle. I'm not going to go into the debate between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel about whether we go up or we go down. That we're talking about, practically speaking, I don't know if anybody possibly say Beis Shammai, we all add one candle per night, going 1 to 8. Okay, what time to light and how long must the candles be lit? So this is a very interesting discussion in the Halacha, because it talks about Shkia or Sof Shkia. Shkia, of course, means sunset. Sof Shkia is debated. What is the end of sunset? Does it mean like when the sun is actually set, or there's another viewpoint that says that Sof Shkia means at the time that the stars come out, or there's another viewpoint that says it's 3 1/4 to 4 or even 5 mil after sunset. Now a mil means approximately 18 to 20 minutes or so of distance. So sunset. So we're talking about it could be an hour after sunset. The main idea, I mean, you look at the list which I gave you here. Tzeiset Kochavim means when the stars come out. There's another view, a half hour after sunset, or a little later is when to light it. But the main principle is that you want to be lighting candles until the point in time when people have stopped, are basically their home. Okay, because the concept of pursuing Nisa, of publicizing the miracle to the people who are on the outside, only works when people are actually on the outside. So once upon a time, when people were literally walking home from the marketplace. So the last stragglers, the sun goes down. There weren't so many lights, or even if there were torches, there certainly wasn't electricity. So the amount of time that people would take until they finally got home, because they weren't walking hours to get home from the marketplace, they were walking 15 minutes, 20 minutes, tops a couple of miles to get home from the marketplace. So that's why we're talking about a half hour after sunset, or even when the stars come out. Nowadays, since people have all kinds of activities and people aren't even walking anyway, they're really driving. So I would think that the concept of Hachetich Regel Min Hashuk is actually a lot later than it was once upon a time, because now people can go out. 7 o'clock, it's good and dark. I need something from the pharmacy, or let's go out to a movie, or let's go out to dinner. People can do that all the time and then still come home. So Hachetich Regel Min Hashuk is going to be much later than it was way back in the day. So nowadays, you could make the argument that Hachetich Regel Min Hashuk is 9 o'clock, 9:30, 10 o'clock. At that point in time, most people are at home and they're not really going out. If it's earlier in your neighborhood, and you look around, take notes the next couple of nights. If you don't see cars driving around, then you know when Hachetich Regel Min Hashuk is. Okay. Maybe that's a good thing at night. Okay, I don't know. Okay. So, but in any case. Now, we get into, to go back to Mike's question, and a few other scenarios of what ifs. Okay, what if the candles go out, or if I realize after I lit them that I lit the wrong number of candles? I lit the candles a half hour ago, it's the fourth night, I'm like, oh my goodness, I lit 3 candles, what was I thinking? So, in either case, if the candles go out, you can light them again, okay, you can relight them, but don't say another bracha. And similarly, if the candles are still lit, and you realize that you missed one of the candles, so you can light the extra candle. But if you lit 3, and it was supposed to be 4, and they're out, then you have one of 2 options. Either you can light them all, do all 4, or just forget it, you missed the opportunity, and don't worry about it, and the next night you'll do you'll do it correctly, and not. In either case, if you're lighting again, if you're lighting additional candles, do not say another bracha. B, what if there is leftover oil? So if there's leftover oil from last night, then use it tonight, okay? And hopefully your wick will not drown too early, and that's fine. What happens if there's leftover oil at the end of Chanukah? So any leftover oil that's in the cups at the end of Chanukah shouldn't be used for anything. It's called hukdash l'mitzvah, so it was separated and used for the mitzvah, so it shouldn't be used for anything, because it's kind of like it's using something in a way which is not appropriate anymore. If you have leftover olive oil, if you use an olive oil candle for your menorah, if you have leftover, so the best thing to do is really to save it until next year, because it's really designated for the Hanukkah candles. But if you've been using your extra virgin olive oil for your kitchens, so the only olive oil in that case that's been designated for the Hanukkah candles is what's actually put into the cups. But if you if you're just taking it out of the kitchen, only what's in the cups you can't use anymore. But if you can use the rest of it that's for your kitchen and for cooking, that would be okay. But if you go to like a Judaica store or a kosher store, they'll typically stock up on a special Hanukkah oil. That's your special Hanukkah oil. Then just save it for next year. What?
Is it for the mitzvah of making latkes?
Oh, that's a very big mitzvah. Very big mitzvah. I'm coming to your house. Okay. What happens if I forget to light? So we talked about this tonight in between Mincha and Mariv. If you forget to light on any given night, so the next night, guess what? It's not like Sfiras Omer. Okay, you can continue again. You continue and you say a bracha. Now, to answer your question, if you forgot the first night, so the first time that you light, or let's say you forget the first night and the second night, or not that you forget, but you just don't get to it because you're out all night. By the time you get home, it's too late, because you're a party animal and all that. So the first time you light, you have to make the Shechianu, because the Shechianu is not on the first night of Hanukkah, it's on the first time that you light. So that's an important thing to bear in mind if in the event that you miss the first night. There is actually an interesting discussion as well. What happens if sometimes you go out to a Hanukkah party, somebody's house, and it starts a little early, before the time when you would have lit candles. Like let's say a gentleman here, your wife picks you up from shul, and you go straight over to somebody's house, and because of that, you didn't light Hanukkah candles at home. And wouldn't you know it, this party goes on and on and on and on and on. And then you realize by the time you get home, my goodness, it's so late, I just want to go to sleep. It's not safe to leave the Hanukkah candles on unattended, and if I go to sleep now, it's just wrong. I'm just not going to light candles. So if that is a possibility, and you don't know at 7 o'clock that you're going to be at this party until 11 o'clock, but if it is a possibility, there is a discussion about making the bracha on the seeing of the Hanukkah candles. In other words, you're in the house of somebody, and they're lighting Hanukkah candles, and you're enjoying the fulfillment of the mitzvah. You're certainly fulfilling the Pirsumei Nisa, the publicizing of the miracle there. So, or when you're driving home, you see Hanukkah candles and they still be lit. There is an approach that talks about the possibility of saying the bracha on seeing the Hanukkah candles. The bracha is not lahadlik ner shel Hanukkah, but it is al riyasach. I mean, I've never said this bracha. I doubt that anybody else ever has. But just to know that it's out there. In either case, if that were to happen, there's always the possibility of what's called being mishtatef b'pruta, the two, which we're going to get to in a moment, and I'll explain it when we get there. Okay, next. I get home late. Do I light the Hanukkah candles? So the mitzvah is, as long as it's dark, you can light Hanukkah candles. But again, only if people are going to see it. If you're going to be lighting Hanukkah candles and then going straight to bed, you're better off not doing it, simply because it's a bracha. I don't know if it's a bracha levatala. It's not really a bracha levatala on the lighting, but as far as the Pirsumei Nisa goes, it's not really going to happen. But if you think that you're going to see them for a half hour and you'll be up, then at least there's Pirsumei Nisa within the home, and that can be done. Separate from that, the guiding principle is Ad shetichla regel min hashuk. If you're going to be lighting it in such a way that people on the outside could technically see it, because you're lighting in the doorway, you're lighting in the front of the house, you're lighting in the window, so you want to do it at a time that people will actually see it. And if it's too late for that, then maybe for that night it's better to do it inside the house, especially if you'll be up for enough time to see it. Then the Pirsumei Nisa for the people inside the house would be okay. What if I'm nervous about going to bed with the candles still lit? You lit it on time, but you know what? It's going to be an early night for you, and the candles are still lit. They've been going for 2 hours, and whatever. Now, in most cases, an oil lamp is not dangerous, especially these little Hanukkah cups that we have. But if a person is nonetheless nervous, as long as the minimal amount of time has happened, so you may blow out the candles if you're going to be going to sleep, and that is a simple solution. What?
Is the minimal amount of time?
So the minimum amount of time is a half hour in darkness, in darkness, ideally. Okay. Yes.
What about in shul, light?
Yes. So in shul, okay. So in shul, I think we're going to get to it, but I'll answer it now. So in shul, the whole point of lighting in shul, there's no mitzvah to light in shul. We do it. We say the bracha because it's the minhag, and we light in shul for one reason only, and that's to do Pirsumei Nisa for the people who are in the shul. So the same rule would apply. If everybody's leaving and nobody's going to be here, blow them out, because you don't. It's much better to have a shul in the morning than to say no. We left the Hanukkah candles on because we are.
You say half hour beyond darkness, you're talking chase or sundown half hour?
No, I mean, it's in the tzeis realm. In the tzeis realm, ideally. Okay, next. What happens if there's only one person home and the other person is traveling? So we mentioned before the halacha principle that ishto kegufo, that a man's wife is like his body, and it goes vice versa in both directions. So if somebody's traveling, the other person can light on behalf of the house. Because again, the mitzvah is not about the individual. It's not whether I lit my Hanukkah candles tonight. I don't have to light. It's near Eshu Beso. It's about the household. The household needs to be lefarsei manes. If I'm on a plane, obviously I can't light Hanukkah candles on a plane, but my wife is in my house, she can fulfill the mitzvah on my behalf and for the family. My kids are going to be lighting anyway. But she can fulfill the mitzvah for us because it's the house that needs to have it, not the individual. If there are non-family members in the same house, so there is the possibility, and this happens like in a college dormitory is a great example of this, where nobody is the same family. You don't have too often you have siblings in the same college dormitory. I'll use Yeshiva University as an example, where they actually let you light it in the college dormitory, but it has to be in the lobby. So you have hundreds of menorahs all burning down the building at the same time and all that, or at least giving every wax candle an early meltdown because of all the heat from all the candles. But there, so what is that? Does everyone have the mitzvah to light? So in the building itself, you can make the argument that no. I mean, once a couple of people have lit, it's certainly pirsume nisa, but people in that stage of life are still in the mindset that I must do it, and there's merit to that argument. But could people say, hey, no, let's just be mishtate bepruta? In other words, we'll both contribute to the same Hanukkah candles, and this way we fulfill our mitzvah in that way. And the answer is yes. And if people share an apartment, they're not the same family, they're roommates, whatever it may be, so they can also do it that way. They can either both light, or they can join together mishtate bepruta. If a person's a guest at somebody for Shabbos, it's not your house, you're not lighting in your house is closed down, you're staying in somebody else's house for Shabbos, you didn't bring a Hanukkah candle, or you didn't even want to, you said, forget it, I'll just join them. You can have that mindset and say, I'll give them a little bit of money, and that's my contribution to the Hanukkah candles, so I'm participating in the mitzvah, and that is an appropriate way to fulfill the mitzvah nonetheless without actually lighting. What material to use for the candles? Anything which stays burned, and of course, safety. The rules of Shabbos candles are very different. When it comes to Hanukkah candles, you can use anything. Most people obviously use a wax candle or use oil, and the oil is considered to be the best. Shemen zayis, zach, pure olive oil is considered the best way to fulfill the mitzvah of Hanukkah candles, but really anything works. Do I need a shamash? Well, to light them, yes, but the shamash doesn't. The shamash could be a match. It could be a lighter. Does it need to be in the menorah? So there are different viewpoints. If it is part of the menorah, it should be differently elevated or somewhat distinct, because otherwise, if it's not distinct, it looks like, it's the third night, and it looks like you have 4 candles. Whereas if it's separate, then it's very clear that it's separate from the count. You don't want to have extra candles on any given night unless it's very clear that this one is separate. There are different viewpoints. Some say you need to have it there. But what happens if there isn't a spot on your menorah for it? What happens if you only have, when I was in college, I had 9 glass cups, and then because it came with the menorah that I bought, and then one of them broke. Okay, so what am I going to do? So I could stick a candle into it, but it's not really made for a candle. It's only made to hold glass cups. So what do you do? So the answer is you don't have a shamash if that's the case. Is it obligatory? Again, there are different viewpoints, but we can make the argument that it's not necessary. Okay, so that's hopefully I covered mostly everything when it comes to the lighting the Hanukkah candles, at least the situations that might come up. And now we move on to other halachos related to Hanukkah. And we have in davening, the main ones that will be seen in shul is that we read the Torah every day of Hanukkah. From the end of Parshas Naso, we say Al Nisim we add to all of our Shemona Esreis and to all of our benching. There is something interesting about, I think in the name of Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, that we have the custom, Mari mentioned before, the latkes, right? What's the whole idea of the food? I'm getting a little bit ahead. What's the whole idea of the food and frying it in oil? Of course, the oil is, remember, the miracle of the oil and whatnot. But in Israel, more than latkes, you fry them in oil, what bracha do you make on it? It's still Borei Pri Adama, right? It's potatoes, there's onions in it. Not so much flour, unless it's a flour-based latke, which is differently tasted than a potato-based latke. But anyway, but what's very popular in Israel? Sufganiyot. Why? So I think it was Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach who made the argument that what bracha achrona do you have to make after eating a jelly donut or any donut? Okay, in Al Michya. What is mentioned in Al Michya that's not mentioned in benching? The Al Mizbeh. One of the approaches to the name of Chanukah is Chanukah HaMizbeach. We want to make reference to the Mizbeach. So it's a great idea to eat the sufganiyah. More important than eating the sufganiyah is making the bracha achrona because of the reference to Chanukah. Now, of course, you mentioned we say Al Nisim, but okay, and there's obviously merit to that as well. But at least if a person is going to eat that sufganiyah, make sure to make the Al Michya. Okay, and finally we say Hallel on Chanukah as well. When it comes to Shabbos, so the halacha is that if a person only has money for one, that the Chanukah candles come before purchase for wine for Kiddush or Havdalah. For Kiddush, you can make Kiddush technically on Challah, and for Havdalah, well, you can go without eating for a couple of days if you don't make Havdalah. Okay, I'm just kidding. But hopefully that's not a problem for anybody. If it is, please let us know. But I hope that is not the case. Next, when it comes to lighting the Chanukah candles in shul, or before going to shul, So, of course, the Hanukkah candles have to be lit before the Shabbos candles, because once you light Shabbos candles, guess what? It's Shabbos. So you have to light the Hanukkah candles beforehand. There are different viewpoints, and we should actually talk about this, whether we should offer an earlier mincha for those who want to daven mincha before lighting Shabbos candles, or before lighting Hanukkah candles, rather. But in either case, the Hanukkah candles that are lit on Friday should be, ideally on oil if possible, or use Shabbos candles, because this way they'll last longer into the evening, because they're lit so much earlier than we normally do. Normally we light after Maariv, which is after sunset already, but when we light before we go to shul, so it's lit significantly before sunset. Lighting before or after Havdalah. So in shul the principle is, again, in shul, why are we lighting the candles? For Sumei Nisa. So we want to have them lit for as long as possible. So we actually, since we say Havdalah in Shemona Esrei, we light the Hanukkah candles before we do Havdalah in shul. Because we've already said Havdalah in Shemona Esrei. And this way the Hanukkah candles are lit for a little longer. People can see them for a little longer in shul. When it comes to at home, so either way is fine. There are both minhagim are recorded, whether to light the Hanukkah candles before Havdalah or to do Havdalah first. It's probably a good idea for, I guess, if you don't have kids in the house, so the chinuch purpose is probably lost. But the idea of doing Havdalah first is probably logically makes more sense to do Havdalah first, even though you can always say Baruch HaMavdil Ben Kodesh V'chol, and I would imagine that's what most people do. You do Havdalah first and then Hanukkah candles. In either case, because you can't really set up the Hanukkah candles on Shabbos, so it's probably better to do it at home to light to do Havdalah first. Okay, different customs of the holidays. I mentioned food briefly. There is another custom because of the way Yehudit was involved in killing that Greek officer. Since she used cheese in order to, or milk rather, to put the guy to sleep. So there is a minhag to eat dairy, not as strong as on Shavuos, but nonetheless there is such a minhag, and that goes hand in hand with the oil. So if you like frying your cheese, you're in great shape on Hanukkah in oil. Okay. Now, if there is another important thing. If unfortunately, if somebody dies on Hanukkah, so the rule is Hanukkah is asur behesped b'tainis. We don't fast and we don't say eulogies. If somebody dies, there are no eulogies. Before burial, the family members who are called an onen. An onen is exempt from mitzvos. You can't do negative mitzvos, but you're exempt from mitzvos. So immediate relatives don't light the Hanukkah candles. And the people who are going to become the mourners once burial takes place, they're not supposed to light Hanukkah candles because they're not obligated, unless there's nobody in the house who is not an immediate relative. So in other words, if let's say Zaidi dies, so the parent who's going to be in Avelus won't be lighting. The spouse will light, or one of the children will light if they're in the house. So that would be how it would be done. But if there is nobody there other than people who are direct Avelim, then they light, but they do not say a bracha, because the candles should be there for Sumei Nisa, but they're not doing the mitzvah.
I'm forgetting, but don't we light in the morning shul as well?
Yes, again, it's for Sumei Nisa. Yeah, for Sumei Nisa, that's what it is. Because there's a gathering of Jews, but it's just a minute. It's not a mitzvah. Yeah, there's no bracha. It's just lit. Okay. I don't know why I have Torah reading again. That's a mistake. Shouldn't be there. When it comes to work, so there is a minhag shelo la'asas malacha b'shah she'aner zolkim. I mentioned that earlier about avoiding doing this malacha while the candles are lit. And of course, that's minimally the half hour that we're talking about. You don't have to, it's like, oh no, the candles are lit, I can't do anything, sorry. That doesn't have to be that way. It's more about the at least an awareness, and the awareness would be that half hour period from, in the evening after it is dark. So just to conclude with some messages of the holiday, it's important to understand that there are a number of things going on when it comes to our observance of Hanukkah and our enjoyment of the holiday. Of course, the concept of Sumei Nisa and the publicizing of the miracle is a tribute to our belief in the miracle and therefore to belief in God. And that is something which we in our own way should flaunt. Even if we're not flaunting to neighbors or to people who may pass our houses, we should flaunt it to ourselves. The whole reason why we're celebrating this holiday is because of our commitment to a people and a commitment to a God who did what He did for the people at that time of the miracle of the war of the Rabbim Miyad Me'atim and the Tmeim Miyad Taharim, of how the many fell into the hands of the few. That is an important message. But even more so, and it's becoming increasingly challenging when we just look at, to use that word again, the commercialization of Chanukah. You know, I remember when I was in yeshiva, one of the Rebbeim said, you know, what is Chanukah all about now for you guys or for kids? Maybe hopefully by that time not. What's it all about? It's all about presents. It's all about this. It's all about. And I ask kids in school, what is Chanukah all about? They say, chocolate gelb. No, that's not what Chanukah. Okay, right. So you know, one of the Rebbeim in my yeshiva joked. He said, "Who won the war? Who won Chanukah?" And you look around now, and with the commercialization of the holiday, it's the Greeks who won. And that is something which in whatever way that we can, we need to fight against. Not to pick up arms or not to not to be ridiculously stubborn about how we observe the holiday. Of course, to be engaging and to be friendly and to accepting of the way people choose to do it, but to understand in the back of, certainly if not in the back of our mind, and ideally in the front of our mind, that the whole concept of the celebration of Chanukah is not about a victory of Greekhood over Jewishhood. It's about a victory of Torah over none. I remember Rav Aaron Kahn, I once heard a shmooze which he gave in YU when I was in MPA, and he said, "What is Rabbi Miyad Mi'atim? It's the few Jews who did believe defeating the many Jews who didn't believe." And again, I don't want to use the word defeating because that's not the goal here. But the purpose is to understand, especially those of us, come from a community where we have an appreciation and value of Torah, that we have to understand what Chanukah is supposed to be. It's a primacy of Torah over a primacy of whatever it is that the Greeks stood for. And this is something which needs to be fought in whatever way that we can. And I hope you understand what I mean by fought. It's not like a battle in the trenches, but it's certainly a battle of the mind, and it's certainly a battle of attitude when it comes to Chanukah. So when you go into Bed Bath & Beyond and you see this bench on a bench that won a Shark Tank, and you say, "Oh, this is so cute," so by all means you could buy it if you want to support the guy. It's very cute. But it's not about the bench on a bench, and it's not about the big Hanukkah bear, and it's not that goes on the front lawn, and it's not to compete with the Santa Claus and the snowman. It's about, when we light these Hanukkah candles, we say, that's what Hanukkah is all about. It's supposed to touch our heart, it's supposed to touch our soul. It's supposed to give us a rededication, not of a Beis HaMikdash, we don't have that, not of a Mizbeach, we don't have that, but a rededication of Torah and observance and mitzvos within our hearts. That's what Hanukkah is supposed to be all about, and we should all be blessed to celebrate and observe Hanukkah in the best way, and that it should be close to our hearts in such a special way. Yes. Light there. Yes. Light your Hanukkah candles there if you can't do anything else. Yeah. Yes.
You didn't make any mention of Monsoor. Is that just a minhag? Is it?
Oh, I didn't mention it directly, but I said follow whatever's in the siddur that you have. There is, obviously it's a minhag. I mean, it's when you fulfill a mitzvah, you say a bracha. Ma'os Torah has references to a lot of the history of the Jewish people and the defeating of the enemies. So, Yevanim, not Yevanim Nikutsu alive, but, there's a reference to Haman, there's a reference to Paro. What do these guys have to do with Hanukkah? The answer is nothing, except that Hanukkah is the defeating of the enemy, and these were also enemies who were defeated. So, is it nice? It's beautiful. Should it be recited? Sure, why not? It doesn't hurt. Is it obligatory? If you haven't done it, you've still fulfilled your mitzvah of lighting Hanukkah candles. So, as that old joke about the lady in the theater goes, it couldn't hide. So I didn't give you the setup; I just gave you the punchline. So we'll leave it at that. Okay, yes.
Isn't one of the purposes of the Shabbos so that you're not supposed to use the candle, so by is that by
Yes.
use it?
Thank you, I forgot to mention that. Another reason for having the shamas there is that in the event that you somehow use the candles accidentally, you're really only using the shamas. So yeah, it's supposed to be a cover for that, yes.
So there's no problem if you extinguish the shamas and use it night after night?
No, absolutely not, no problem at all. No problem at all. Okay. Okay, all right, thank you everybody, thank you for coming.